Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, and you understand a bit of English? Good. Okay, so my name is Ellie. I'm going to be talking to you today about my experience going from a HR generalist role into more of a recruitment role, which led me to sourcing. So I am going to tell you a bit about myself to start off with. So this is me. I am Ellie. I worked first at a company called the University of Oxford, and Oxford is where I am from. And then I went to a company called Adestra. Adestra are an email marketing software company. And then I most recently joined a company called Oodle Car Finance in January. And I still work in Oxford, but during that time I have gone from a generalist HR role that was very much about recruitment to more of a specialist tech recruitment role that requires me to source. I'm also a public speaker, which is why I'm here today. I actually spoke at Katrina's event, Disrupt HR, in London in December. And Katrina and I went on a trip called Connecting HR Africa, which is this picture you can see at the top here. And we went to deliver volunteering and deliver training to the staff of a charity called Retrack. So now that you know a bit about me, well, I have always worked in HR. I love HR, and I love that it's such a varied role. But what I've really loved about all of my roles is recruitment. And in terms of my experience, I have never worked with a specialist recruitment team. So recruitment has always fallen to me, and I've had to learn as I go along. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So when I joined the University of Oxford, although I had experience of having to recruit for them, it was really quite an easy job because everybody has heard of the University of Oxford. Hands up if you've heard of the University of Oxford before. Exactly. It's quite a popular institution and quite well known. So my job in recruitment was really just about getting the job ad out there and making sure that people could click apply, and they would. We would have maybe 100 applications for every single job that we had. And what I had to do was just generate a shortlisting pack out of the recruitment software and send it off to the hiring manager. So that was really quite a positive experience of recruitment, and I thought, wow, this is easy. And then I joined a tech company, and wow, things changed. So hands up if you've heard of Adestra. Nobody's heard of Adestra. And this was the challenge. Katrina's heard of Adestra. So one person's heard of Adestra. This was the challenge that I faced because I had come from the University of Oxford that everybody knew. And then I had gone to a company with no brand awareness. So when I posted that job advert that I was so used to getting 100 applications in response to, I got probably 10, if not 0. So suddenly, my easy recruitment job had turned into a very, very difficult job. And I was recruiting for developers. Well, guess what? So is everybody else. So something needed to change. And this is how I found sourcing. So in my experience, I had gone from a company with lots of applications. My job was just to manage those candidates through the process, keep them informed, give them a positive experience. I had then gone to a role where I was suddenly having to source and find developers. And I still didn't have a recruitment team that I could work with to find out how on earth you do this. So I learned along the way and I taught myself, and I think that you absolutely can do the same. So the difference for me between recruiting and sourcing, and I've tried to put it here, is that when you're a recruiter, and it's not as black and white as this, so please don't think that I'm offending anyone, but when you're a recruiter, you've got lots and lots of candidates to manage. Your job is really to think about how you're going to manage those candidates through the process. And you've got lots of candidates, whether they're relevant to your job or not, because they can just click apply. When you're a sourcer, and I've put this ninja on the slide here, you're targeting the candidates that from a quick look at their profile, wherever that might be, and the information that you've gathered about them, you know that you want to speak to them. So for me, it's a much more effective way to start thinking about how you're going to bring the talent that you need into your business. So for me, I was moving from recruiting to sourcing, and one of the biggest things that I needed to learn to do better was something called an intake meeting. And this was a term that I hadn't come across before I went into more of a sourcing role. But essentially, you're doing a role scoping. So when you have that email from the hiring manager saying, "Hi Ellie, I'd like to recruit another developer," and you think, "Oh no, I've got to find another developer." The best way that you're going to have a good chance of finding the right person is by asking the right questions at the very start. So I now have this intake meeting checklist, and you can find really good templates online if you search for them. And I will ask, what is the role in simple terms, especially when it's a tech role? Now, I know a lot about the tech industry, but I'm certainly not a developer. So what I want to make sure is that I have definitely understood what they're looking for before I go out and start looking. So that's my main idea from that meeting, is to understand, to someone that's not in tech, how can I speak to people authentically about the role that I'm trying to recruit for? And how do the 3 to 4 main responsibilities break down? And how can I talk about that when I'm doing a phone screen with a candidate? And that's as much for me to find out about them as it is for them to decide whether they think my company's interesting enough. So when you're doing that intake meeting and then writing a job advert, I would think about what are the projects that they're going to work on, and can you tell that story? So at the moment at Oodle Car Finance, where I work, we provide car finance to customers through a network of car dealers. But we're about to build and launch a native app where we're going to go direct to the customer and build an unrivaled retail journey where they can get their pre-approved finance and walk into a dealership as if they're a cash buyer. Now that is completely new in the UK market, and when I'm speaking to a developer about the fact that they could be the one to help us launch that app, it's a really interesting conversation. But I have to find out that information in this meeting. So I also look at, and you can see down here, I'm sure you'll get the slides, what are the big pluses? So if I find someone with this experience, you might not even want me to phone screen them, you want to see them tomorrow. And what are the red flags? What should I be looking out for? It might be that if they've got a certain technology on their profile, that you wouldn't want to interview them. But I think it's really about finding out how you can best build a relationship with your hiring manager at the very start of the process. So once you've done your intake meeting, you want to do an XRay search. And when I say X-ray, I don't mean being at the hospital and having a scan. I mean getting onto Google or whatever search engine you want to use and being clever about how you're going to search for this person. And it's about keywords. So in that intake meeting, I wouldn't be asking, what's the job title of the role? Because I already know that. What I want to know is what job is the person that you're looking for potentially doing now? So whenever I've moved roles, and I don't know about any of you, I've never ended up having the same job title that I had at the role before. It's always been slightly different. And so if I went and searched for the title of the role I want now, I'm probably not finding the people that want to move into that role. It might be that they don't want to move sideways, they want to move forwards. And that's not always the case. And that's where your OR function comes in on your search. So 3 very common terms in XRay Search are and, or, and not. So that allows us to include certain keywords and search for multiple keywords at the same time, and at the same time exclude those things that we said were red flags in that intake meeting before. But what is is really instrumental in your search is if you know multiple different types of technologies that you think this person should be using, you can include them all in one search string if you're clever about it. And it's not just about your and, your or, your not. You can search on certain sites. You can search for certain file types. So I could search for PDFs and try and go straight to where people have got their resume or their CV on their website. And you can get really clever with how you build that search string. Now, that takes a lot of time. So when I first started out in sourcing, I'll admit that that wasn't what I did. What I did is I went to this website called Recruitment, and it builds the search string for you. Now, I wouldn't do this now, but there is absolutely no shame when you're learning how to source in taking some really easy steps to build your search strings, because that's the only way that you're going to learn. You need to start to learn the language of Boolean. It is a complete foreign language if you've never done it before. And so what you do with this tool is you put the country that you're trying to source in, you put the job title, and you can use your or function here and your and function here, so it's quite clever. And you can also put specialist keywords that you're looking for, and it builds the search string for you. And that will source on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Dribbble, on Google+, which I don't think many people use, but you can still do it. And then you can go away and look through the profiles. And as you do that, you start to learn about how XRay Search can really help you look for the right people. And it's really not about getting it right first time, because you'll learn that more and more as you go through. It's about trying things out and seeing which results give you the most qualified candidates for the role that you're looking for. But how do you choose the keywords? So I touched upon thinking about the job title. If they're using certain technologies, you'd want to include it in there, but it might be that it's quite a new technology. So you can use tools like Amazing Hiring, hopefully Yulia's listening somewhere, to help you. So Amazing Hiring is a tool that I only came across last year at a conference called SourceCon, and I had a free 2-week trial. And what it does is it will scrape multiple different sources at once and look at where those candidates have profiles. So when I'm looking for a developer, I'm not going to LinkedIn. I want to know, where are they on GitHub? Do they rank highly? Are they on Stack Overflow? And Amazing Hiring can help collate that data for you. Now, if you're a more specialist sourcer, it might be that you don't need that tool because you've learned to write the correct search strings. But as someone who came into it with no experience of sourcing, tools are invaluable in helping you get to know the market. So, I then thought, how can I get more inquisitive with my sourcing? Because I've learned about keywords, and that's working well for me, but I see that lots of people can do some really cool stuff, and I don't know how to do it. So there's a website called the Sourcing Games. Has anyone heard of this? Great. Yulia has. So someone called Jan wrote this website, and it's completely free, and I would recommend it to anyone wanting to think of new ways to try sourcing. So you can go in, play, I think it's over 10 different games for free, and it will just challenge you to find information. So an example is, it will say, there's someone that wrote a blog post for Microsoft in 1998. Go and find it. And you have to find it and give the keyword that they're looking for to move on to the next level. And I think this gamified approach is really good for someone that is new to sourcing, because it's all about learning the right mindset. And I've genuinely used things I've learned from playing this game. I got to play a game at work, it was so fun. I've genuinely used those things in my role, and it's helped me find people. But you have to know where to look. So I'm currently recruiting for a product designer, and I could go into LinkedIn and search for product designers, and I would get a lot of results. But I'd then have to find their portfolio somewhere, and it might not be on their LinkedIn profile. So for me, that's not the most targeted way to go about my search. So it's not just about your keywords, and I know that LinkedIn isn't necessarily used by everyone here. So this is a perfect way for you to think about where else you might start to source. So I went on to a website called Dribbble, and you can filter by location, so you might not even need keywords on certain sites. And I had a look at people in London, which is where I'm hiring, who ranked highly. And I came across a really good developer who had a reference to DJ Khaled, and I'm going to tell you about him in a minute. But when you found the right person, you can ruin it all by saying the wrong thing. It's like a first date. So you need to plan what you're going to say, and this links back to what Katrina was saying. A personal email is going to be so much more effective than filling their LinkedIn inbox, because they'll have already had messages from everyone saying that they've got the perfect opportunity all day, every day. So if you can find their personal email, that's what you need to be using. Rather than LinkedIn, it will increase your response rate dramatically. Even if it takes you more time to find, it's really worth the effort. But then you need to make them feel special. So if I feel like I've been sent a template email, I feel a bit hurt by that, because I think someone's not spent the time finding out about me. And my social media is quite public. So people could very easily find out what I've been up to, what I'm interested in. I post about my work. And it's the same with developers. Developers normally have a lot of information out there. It's just not on LinkedIn. So when you find them, even if you found them on one account, I'd really recommend going and looking at where else they've got accounts. I always Google their username, and then it normally brings up where else they are. So if someone's just tweeted about watching the latest Game of Thrones episode, I might include that in the subject line and ask them what they thought of it, and it will start a more genuine conversation than, "Hi, I came across your profile, and I thought you might be interested in an opportunity that I have for you." I could send that to anyone, and I'm probably not going to get more than one response in 100, because it's insulting in this day and age where recruiters are contacting candidates constantly with a lot of information about I, but they don't take the time to say, "I found out a bit about you, and I really want to talk to you because I think you could make a massive impact in our company." And that has a huge difference. But most people, like Katrina said, have a lot of emails going into their inbox every single day. So they probably might not respond. And I'm guilty of not responding. In fact, Katrina herself has told me off and contacted me on multiple channels to tell me to reply to her message. So if I don't respond to Katrina, and we're really good friends, you can imagine how low on my priority list a recruiter might be. So we need to think in the same way. And you need to think about how you're going to follow up on your reach outs, because so many candidates won't respond to your first message. Don't take that as an insult. They're just busy. Try again and think about your strategy. So send email 1. You could wait 2 to 3 days. You could then send another follow-up. But don't stop there. Think about when else you might want to contact them. So try a different method. Maybe they don't use that email address anymore. Maybe you want to tweet them and say, "Hello, I've been trying to get in touch with you. I'd love to have a chat." You could do 4 or 5 reach outs, and you could say at the end, "I've tried to get in touch with you and it just seems to be impossible. I won't take any offense if you tell me you're not interested, but I promise you I'll leave you alone for now." And if they come back to you after that, you've still built a relationship. A positive reply is obviously the best, but a negative reply still means that you've got someone to take their time to give to you. So this is my example reach out, and I appreciate you probably can't read it. Who's heard of DJ Khaled? Okay, one person. So this candidate had on his contact form a reference to this American DJ, DJ Khaled. And I admit I'm not cool enough to know much about this guy. So all I did was I went onto Google and had a look at his top songs. And when I did my reach out, I said, I'm afraid I'm no DJ Khaled, and you might be thinking, another one of his phrases, with me reaching out to you. But your portfolio gave me Wild Thoughts, one of his song titles, about you joining Oodle Car Finance as a product designer. Now, I can guarantee that no one else is going to get that message and have it relevant to them. And I can also guarantee that no one else has written him that message. So I'm really going to stand out in his inbox. And I would implore you to do the same. Think about how you can make your message so personalized that if you sent it to someone else, it just wouldn't make any sense. That's what's going to get you the response, because that's the highly personalized approach that we need to have. It's such a competitive market. But how do you measure your success? So I talked about response rate, and I've got a very handy picture of a funnel here. When you're contacting your candidates, you need to think about who is responding, how are you going to measure it. You might not have a tool that will measure it for you, but it's as easy as filling in a spreadsheet. And when you get a positive response, that obviously looks great. But you might think it's not worth recording your negative responses, and I disagree. Because like I said before, it's someone that's giving you their time, and it might be that they just took another job, but they didn't update their LinkedIn profile yet. And then next time that you're hiring for the same role, you can say, hey, how's that job going? I'm hiring and I'd love to talk to you again. Keep that engagement going, and like Katrina said, play the long game. Just because that candidate's not interested now, you don't know what's going on in their life. They might be interested later on. Your conversion rate is about the funnel that I've got pictured here. So if you think about all of the candidates that you've got, they might be coming from lots of different sources. They might be coming from agency. They might be coming in-house from an advert. And they might be coming from your sourcing efforts. And what I think is really useful to prove to your company the value of your work is to show the conversion rate of how far your sourced candidates get through the process. And if you're doing a really highly targeted effort, you should be able to show that your sourced candidates have a much higher conversion rate than your other sources. And that just makes you look great to your company, so it's a win-win. And then you want to look at your percentage of hires directly sourced. And what I think is actually really interesting to measure is how long they stay. Because on average, research shows that sourced candidates stay a lot longer than agency candidates. So you're future-proofing your efforts, and you're saving yourself from having to keep sourcing for the same roles, because the people that you're bringing in are staying longer. So I implore you to create a to-do list after my talk, and I implore you to make your own intake meeting checklist and think about what your sourcing strategy will be. Sourcing is a really strategic role, and people might not see it that way, but we know that it is. We know that if we have the right strategy, we can find the right people, and we can save the company a lot of time, a lot of money on their recruitment. So show people that you're being strategic, and think about those keywords in advance that you're going to use. Talk to your hiring managers about sourcing and get them interested in what you do. Build that relationship. And then I'd say to test. Keep trying things out. Use the tools that I've mentioned to just test different ways of doing things. And what might work for me might not work for you, but you'll find your own way. The most important thing is that you're learning all the time. If I just did these things that I've talked about today for the next 5 years, the technology will be out of date within maybe a year, maybe sooner. So you have to constantly test and learn. Try new things, and you will definitely succeed. Thank you.
Ellie, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
the great topic. Any questions?
Yeah, we've got one there.
Oh.
There's one there.
Just a moment. Настя, побыстрее дай, пожалуйста, девушке.
Thank you for your speech, and I have an answer. I am a recruiter in outsourcing thing, so it sometimes is really impossible to describe our client that their job description should be, and we have some checklists, and sometimes I should hire people when I know only that I'm needed to find 20 Node.js developers and it's the only information I have. Yes, I'm not banned in Google and I can find some information, but I'm not sure that it is the right job description. Is there any cases to make normal email while sourcing when I have no information?
So I'm not quite sure I understand your question, sorry. So you're saying that you don't have enough information from the hiring manager to source?
And I can't get it because I'm outsourcing girl and the client who's given me a request, he are not interested in any communication about the position.
Does he want to hire?
Yes, but he wants to have a miracle, because I'm the only miracle he has.
Okay, I think it is a tricky one, but ultimately, unless he changes his approach, you're never going to have the best chance of success. So for me, it's a communication thing between both parties. And do you have success stories from when you've done it elsewhere, where you've had a really strong brief?
Yes. But I have one strong point in my company because I can provide remote work, but I'm not sure that I can like a goose going in there and say I don't know anything, but I have remote work.
I think it's really about communication there, and it sounds like a bit of a communication barrier, but unless things change, you're not going to be able to do your job properly. So even if you try and get creative, maybe send them that checklist to fill in. If they don't want to have the time having that conversation, which they should, think about how you might get that information in different ways. So maybe send them some bullet point questions, or you could say, I've had these questions from a candidate, could you answer them for me? And go about it that way. But unless they're going to invest the time in their recruitment, they will be the reason that it fails. It's not completely up to you to fill this role. It's on them because it's their person that they need to hire.
Thank you for an answer.
Thank you. Any questions? Dima, just a moment.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi.
Yeah, just a really quick one for me. You're talking a lot about X-ray searching. Do you have a special point or plan? When should you start doing this? When, I don't know, our official trackers are not working or when our social medias are not working? Because it's quite complicated and sometimes could be a bit time-consuming for us.
I would say don't do it at the point where things aren't working, because intake meetings are for building your sourcing strategy. So I would actually do it right at the start. Even sometimes before I have a job advert, I start sourcing, because then I can sit with the hiring manager and go, I found this person, I think they're really relevant from what we discussed, but can you just let me know that I'm on the right track? And that helps us to build the relationship right at the start. I'd recommend doing it right at the start, because if you do that targeted approach and maybe reach out to 10 people but you hire one, that might be much quicker than putting an advert out, doing your social media, investing in all of that work. And then if you haven't found someone in, say, even a couple of weeks or a month, you then have to start doing that reach out strategy. And like I said, you might not get a response first time. So it takes the time to build that relationship with the people that you're trying to source. So I'd say, as standard, do it right at the start of your recruitment, or just test it for, let's say, 3 months, see what the impact is on your time to hire, and then you can demonstrate the value in doing it straight off the bat.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hello,
Somebody
я буду
else?
говорить на русском. У меня такой вопрос. Как определить лучший
I need
инструмент
my
для...
earphones. Hang on.
Да.
I need the earphones to hear. give you
Не,
this.
проще сейчас использовать, да, с технологией.
Okay, I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Как определить лучший инструмент для поиска сотрудников непосредственно для компании? Сколько времени для этого нужно?
So from what I understood, the question is how to find the best tool for your company to source candidates.
Да.
So in terms of finding the best tool, I mentioned a couple there. So I mentioned Amazing Hiring. That's really useful for tech roles. But if you're not hiring for tech roles, it might not be so useful for you. Otherwise, there are plenty of Chrome extensions out there and tools that you can use. I think it's just about being inquisitive and using Google to find what people recommend. I really recommend, if you're brand new to sourcing, using that website I mentioned, Recruitment, just because it helps to give you a bit of an idea about search strings. But there are so many tools out there and loads of them work really well. So just test a few. A lot of them are free and see what works for your company because it will be absolutely different.
Да, например, я использую такие инструменты, как «Мой круг», «Линк», Facebook, но чтобы прийти там, к какому-то конечному подытогу, требуется много времени для анализа, какой из этих сайтов более эффективен для меня. Потому что вот в той компании, в которой я сейчас работаю, до этого не использовали какие-то современные методы. Работала HR, которая работала 6 лет и пользовалась одним хедхантером. Поэтому сотрудники, ну понятно, какие в этой компании. Сейчас я работаю в компании 3 месяца. Да, будет только 3 месяца. И я начала работать с Хабером, с моим кругом, но он еще не столь эффективен, потому что я работаю с инженерами, а раньше я подбирала разработчиков. И не очень понимаю, вот, что мне конкретно использовать сейчас.
Okay, so from what I understood, the question was, I hire using lots of different sources. I've used MySpace before, and I worked at a company previously where the HR team were quite outdated, and now I need to know where to look for the right people, like developers. So I think, are you talking about websites rather than tools for sourcing? So where to look for the developers? Wait for the translation to come through.
Я хотела бы использовать различные источники, как и веб-сайты, так и просто инструменты.
Okay. So for websites for looking for developers, GitHub is a massive one. People can post their open source code and they tag it with the technologies that they use. You can source on GitHub really, really easily. There are some great tutorials online, including how to get anyone's email address from their GitHub profile, which is very useful. Stack Overflow is another really good one, and even Reddit. I love using Reddit for sourcing because you can corroborate what multiple channels people are using and build up much more of a profile about them. So once you've gone past the keyword side of sourcing, it's actually great to look at multiple sources at the same time. So if you're using maybe Facebook groups, it could be a LinkedIn group, it could be Reddit threads. You can, especially for developers, find people that appear in multiple of the groups for the technologies that you're looking for, and that's a really smart way to go about things. Rather than just using one source and finding out one piece of information, you can start to get really clever about the multiple technologies that you're looking to use. So, for example, when I'm hiring for DevOps, I need to find people with experience of Java and Amazon Web Services. So I could do a keyword search for that, or I could look at who appears in both meetup groups, or both Reddit threads, or both Facebook groups, and I can build up much more of a picture of them. And that's a more advanced way for me to start thinking about where they are. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. Коллеги, это была Элли Браун. Большое спасибо за такую отличную презентацию.
Спасибо.
Thank you for